So I lived in the very, very southern region of Venezuela in a place called San Fernando de Apure. And it really stayed with me that the basic rights that we have in our society, they don't exist in a lot of places. And that's when I came back very convicted that whatever I did in my career, I wanted to make sure that I made an impact on the world.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win, we come to fly. This is where we make our dreams come to life. Welcome to Innovation City.
Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, disruptors, and creators who are making things happen today. My name is Michael T. Johnson. I am your co-host along with Tyler Kelly, and we are at Venture Cafe Miami tonight. So Venture Cafe is the #1 gathering of innovators on a Thursday night in the entire world. We're really excited because we have Nicole Denil with us tonight.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
So let me tell everyone about Nicole. She is the GM Global Channel Sales Internet of Things, which that means General Manager of Global Sales, right? Internet of Things, IoT at Microsoft. And you have an extensive career in both corporate and startup environments, cloud computing, and of course IoT, with 22 years combined experience or careers with Microsoft, Rockwell Automation, Rockwell Software. And we found out you've opened several businesses as well. So like in that startup sector, you're pretty experienced in that arena as well. So I think this is going to be a pretty interesting conversation. And I'm super excited to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you. Love to be here.
So first off, Nicole, so from your history and your background, like being involved in the startup scene and all those things, why would Microsoft hire someone like you to do what you do?
I ask myself that all the time. Why did you hire me? But no, I actually think, I have a background in business and technology, and also I gravitate toward new technologies. So anything that's sort of bleeding edge, painful to get into, and let's go take a leap of faith and try to see how this goes. That's where I have my expertise and I gravitate towards. So within Microsoft, I've done a lot of turnaround and growth businesses, and outside of Microsoft as well, to try to, let's launch something to see if it sticks or not. And so I hope that that's why they see me as a valuable asset at Microsoft.
So when somebody wants something new or unexplored, you're the person that they bring on to do that.
I like to think that's true.
Take me back to how you got started in your career. Like what was it that made you gravitate towards kind of this new ground, startup, all these things that are kind of common in your history? What brought you to those things?
Well, when I was 16, I went to Venezuela as an exchange student, and this was before we had cell phones or internet or anything like that. This was 1986. And so it was kind of unexplored territory for me and my family. And when I came back, I said, I want to work in tech, and I want to work in a business that is ethical. That was really important for me, to work for a company that could change the world through technology and make the world a better place. And so I started out in several different companies doing different things and ended up at Rockwell Automation for 10 years. And it was really important for me that they were building the societies that we were based in, which was huge. And so we opened up a lot of offices in Latin America. Later, I ended up going to Microsoft through the fact that we were working as partners in technology. And Microsoft, I would say, is sort of the panacea of the companies that you would want to work for if you want to make the world a better place. I mean, that's in our mission statement, right? We empower people to be better. And so I've found that through technology, we've done things not only centered around, hey, let's build technologies that can support nonprofits. Let's build technologies that can support disabilities or accessibility or that type of thing. But on top of that, technologies that help in disaster response, where if you've got, people that are trying to find their loved ones in a disaster situation, we have technologies that can help unite families together and to be able to bring people and all of the things that they need at that moment back together again.
So you were talking about way back Venezuela. Was there something that you experienced there that like kind of drove you to that idea of technology as something to improve, basically just improve humanity?
Yeah, I mean, in Venezuela, I was 16 years old, and what struck me was the extreme poverty that I experienced. I lived in the very, very southern region of Venezuela in a place called San Fernando de Apure, and basic things like education were not a given. The teachers were on strike the entire year that I was there. I didn't go to school a single day, and the kids were picketing and protesting to say, hey, we have a right to an education. And I'm a girl from Wisconsin. I'm like, yeah, we have a day off of school. It's a snow day, right? Constant snow day. And it really stayed with me that the basic rights that we have in our society, they don't exist in a lot of places. And that's just the educational piece. And then if you look at, the extreme poverty and ability to access food and water, clean water in times of drought, it was very evident to me. And that's when I came back very convicted that whatever I did in my career, I wanted to make sure that I made an impact on the world.
That's cool. And now technology has advanced to a point to where it really is capable and in real life making a difference in people's lives. And you have a front row seat to that technology and those advancements. So tell me about a few things that you're excited about just in what you're seeing today.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So for many years in my life, it wasn't very clear how to marry technology with making the world a better place, except that, hey, I'm going to work for a company that does good versus evil, right? Because there's the multinational corporation. There are several faces of it. It's sort of sometimes we can see the evil part of it, and then we can see the good parts of that. I belong to one of the biggest multinational corporations on the planet, and so I think with that comes almost a celebrity status, right? Where you look at that corporation and you say, is that corporation doing great things, or are they just out there to make a buck, right? And so with that responsibility, you look at things through a little bit of a different lens. And so for those years that technology wasn't quite there, it was still meandering and, oh, hey, now I have a cell phone, now I have the internet, but what do I do with it? Now we're in an age where we have cloud computing, we have big data, we have quantum computing, we have artificial intelligence, all kinds of things that can be scary, and they can also be extremely productive. And I'll give you an example. If you're thinking about like, okay, I'm going to hook up my stove or my refrigerator to the internet, that can open up a lot of possibilities for somebody to come in and hack your stove or your refrigerator. They can turn on your gas at night for an hour, and then just before you wake up, boom, turn it off so you don't notice it, and then turn it on. And if you do that through several thousands of homes, you could have a really big issue. So technology can give you things like predictive maintenance. It can give you a much better experience in terms of making sure that your formula for your baby is exactly at the right temperature, but it also introduces all kinds of other possibilities in terms of hackability of your home, where today we kind of draw the line like, hey, not in my home. So things like, coming up with very secure platforms to be able to do the Internet of Things and to do quantum computing and to do artificial intelligence in a safe way, that's where, I think it's really important to have a company that's thinking about how do we do that in an ethical way. How do we use, for example, mixed reality to have a better experience in an emergency situation? For example, today, when you have an EMT that arrives on the scene of an accident, they're generalists. They need to be able to figure out, how are you doing? What's happening to you at the very moment? What can I do to help you and make you more comfortable? And more important, how do I get you to the hospital in a timely manner? And artificial intelligence or mixed reality can give you the possibility of having that emergency medical technician be able to, through a camera, look at you and have the person back at the ranch that's a specialist say, hey, this person's in, he's in dire straits. You need to do something a little bit different. I'm going to give you the instructions while you're looking. So it gives the mixed reality, gives the technician the possibility of having somebody that's a specialist look at you and also instruct the person that's in front of you what to do. Reach in and touch your kidney or whatever it might be, right? Or put a tourniquet on. And so it gives a whole augmented intelligence to an actual person that might be aiding in first response.
So, really, you're talking about not just improving lives, but saving people's lives through technology and just protecting the vulnerabilities that might create. That's really your job, isn't it?
It's two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
So at Microsoft, you present these ideas to whom? Like governments, corporations, small business. Like who's your target audience? Like what are you? What's your message?
All of the above.
Okay.
We have a wide audience of customers and partners. So we work a lot with governments on making a more secure environment to do the things that I just described. We work with partners that build these technologies. We have a partner, for example, that built a car that the race car driver was paralyzed, and he could never drive again. And through the technologies that we helped build, he's able to he raced in the Indy 500 with his eyes. He was able to control the car with his eyes. And then based on that same technology that measures all of the environment, the tire pressure, his eyes, where they're going, his body temperature, his heart rate, all of that information we aggregate in a way that can sort of measure if he's in distress, because obviously he's driving a car with his eyes. And that same technology, we took it and put it into a situation where we built the first responder application for a massified use, where we could say, hey, let's take that data that we can now collect and put it in the cloud, analyze it quickly, and be able to say, this person is in distress. How can we give a first responder the tool through augmented reality to be able to diagnose and fix the situation on the spot?
That's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. So we're talking about like all these technology things that seem really far-fetched, I think, to some people, but I think what we're seeing is that technology's kind of moving at such a rapid pace that some of these things are already happening today. Like kind of this really kind of strange future is already happening today, and much of it's going to be here like very soon. So I think that's kind of hard for some people to comprehend. So what does that world look like where we have all this technology ingrained in every part of our lives doing exactly what you're talking about?
Well, I think it's, like you said, it seems like it's in the future, but the future is here. The future is now. It's actually happening. It's happening in pockets. What I just described is real. And we're using that technology to make decisions faster in an aggregated way. That's data that's processed in the cloud, but gives people the right information in the precise moment to make the decisions to maybe save somebody's life, right? That's happening today. That's going to continue to move along because we're talking about precise moments in time. But if you think about you know, in the future, if all that data starts to get aggregated in a way that we can cure cancer, right? Where we're starting to see patterns that is not just this doctor, this technologist, this analyst looking at the data from individual patients, but it gets aggregated in a way that quantum computing can start to play a role in how do we solve the cure for cancer. That's going to happen in the future. And I think that that's where we're looking is, you know, how do we take these little pockets of success and massify them in a way that we can make massive breakthroughs in the world?
That's awesome. We met the founder of the creator of the cancer goggles, which is essentially what you're talking about, where doctors, he's a professor of radiology at Washington, St. Louis. So he created the goggles where doctors all over the world, via this new 5G technology that's on its way, right? They'll be able to, without any latency, essentially do their work from anywhere, right? Yeah. Or, you know, you have your best surgeon in the world that can work on somebody from across the country. So the future is bright, and it's here. But what are some of the challenges? Some of those ethical challenges that you see?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge that we see is fear of security, of giving, you know, data up to who knows where, right? Because people don't really know. And obviously we've had some news recently about breaches and personal security and that type of thing. But I think that the benefits so far outweigh the potential breaches. And I think medical is really a place that it's so amazing the things that we can do. And I'll give you an example from a few years ago. We worked with a company in Canada who the company was Canada is socialized healthcare, and so great, but it takes a long time to get a diagnosis for any particular ailment, and so they crowdsourced technicians that could analyze ultrasounds. So if you think about a traditional ultrasound, you go into the doctor, they scan you, takes a couple weeks to get a diagnosis. The way that they did it is that you could actually just go in, get the ultrasound, and then it would be crowdsourced to a bunch of cloud technicians that could analyze it and send it very quickly to the doctor. And so it used to take about 2 to 3 weeks, took about 15 minutes for you to get a diagnosis. Same thing with blood scanning. We've got devices now that can do in-home analysis of your blood. So if you're, a diabetic, you can put this little device on your finger. If it sees something that's out of band, out of range of what's normal, whatever parameters you set it, send it to the cloud. It gets analyzed there again to make sure that it's all, legit, and then sent to a technician and the doctor. And in about 15 minutes, you can get feedback on whether or not you've got an issue and should go in to see the doctor. And those things would have taken trips to the doctor, trips to the clinic, and weeks later you would get results, or days later. So interesting things in the medical field for sure.
Wow, that's awesome. For people that don't know, what is quantum computing and Internet of Things? Like, for just the listener out there that has no idea what we're talking about, maybe kind of explain it in their terms so they can get a picture of what we're talking about.
That's a really good question, because I think of the Internet of Things as being an evolution from cloud computing, which is something that we've been talking about for years, right? Taking what you've done traditionally on premises and on servers and putting that into a massive compute capability, much like you procure your electric capability, right? You don't set up your own turbine. You contract the electric company, right? That's kind of how cloud computing came along. And then with that massive capability of doing compute, power, and storage, then came the ability to process massive amounts of data, which then was called big data. We still call it big data. And then if we think about quantum computing, it's an exponential augmentation to what you and I know, with the amount of data that you can aggregate and to make intelligent, because big data is lots of data, but then quantum computing is how do you take that intelligence that's built with the massive amounts of data and turn it into something that we can use to cure cancer or to diagnose a patient with something that before a single human mind wouldn't have been able to diagnose.
So quantum computing, you're talking about, especially with an application to health, like a doctor only has so many points of data and only one perspective. So is what you're saying is quantum computing can take in all these other factors, that doctor's guess, like this doctor's guess, and approach the science of it from a much different angle than a human would, and just see a bunch more possibilities. Is that how it works?
Absolutely. And I think it's augmenting the human, because obviously a computer is not going to be able to solve everything, but augmenting the knowledge that a single person might have or a collective group of people might have around a certain subject, and being able to take that data, process it, and then augment the decisions that are made around how do we go solve this for a cure.
What other like applications are you seeing a lot of promise besides medical?
Medical's one, and then industrial automation is a huge one, right? We've always struggled with, okay, how do we make processes better and easier? How do we do predictive maintenance? How do we make sure that if there's the plant floor, if your machine's going to fail, that we don't lose 1 million gallons of oil in the pipeline, or, batches of medicine, or how do we automate all of the processes that sort of make the world tick, right? But then there's also the individual. How do you know if your refrigerator's compressor is going to fail until everything's spoiled? Could you have your refrigerator give off a signal to the maintenance guy that happens to be in the neighborhood, or the maintenance person that happens to be in the neighborhood, and say, hey, I'm going to fail. Come by and fix me before I fail, right? So there's the consumer aspect, and then there's the business aspect. We've had some successes with companies that do elevators, right? And nobody wants to be stuck in an elevator while the elevator fails, right? Yeah. So to have that predictive maintenance capability to say, hey, I'm at my engine is on the last leg, come fix me before that actually happens. Those are the types of things that we're really focused on, especially the predictive qualities of any type of operation, really.
It seems like, from what you're saying, the potential is there to like basically eliminate any kind of waste and inefficiency in any process that we have, really.
Yeah, that's the idea. That's what we want to do. We definitely want to make sure that processes are streamlined and that technology is there to help in a way to predict and repair things before they actually happen.
That's really cool. The nature of disruption is that it disrupts, and I think automation is probably the biggest disruptor of them all, like when it hits. But we all know that it's coming. So typically things that disrupt, you don't see them until it's too late. We all know automation is coming. So two sides of the same coin, like how does automation help level the playing field? But then also, like, in a society where right now 60 to 70% of all jobs could be automated, how do we prepare for that future?
Yeah. And that's a really interesting conundrum, because we've looked at automation in the past as, hey, especially when I was working with Rockwell, right? Rockwell was an industrial automation company. And so you think about, okay, this could help a company in Costa Rica stay alive versus the competitors that they have coming in from Mexico or the US or from anywhere in the world, China, right? And so the mere point of just automating a very basic thing can help companies actually be relevant versus, being stuck in the past, which is, okay, we can't compete against the larger players that are all automating, right? So automation somewhat democratizes IT and allows players that had a very large barrier to entry or to sustenance before to still be players in the marketplace. But it is also a slippery slope because it does occupy jobs that were once done by humans. But as technology advances, I think, there's a reality to that, which is there has to be sort of a baseline of some sort of automation in order to survive. And I think as we grow along, it's making it so that a lot of those original players that would have exited the market a long time ago have a new ability to stand because they're not looking at the manufacturing part as being the core value that they bring to the table. That's all standard, right? I can automate a facility in Costa Rica just as easily as I can automate it in Nebraska, right? That's not their staying power. Their staying power is, what do they build? How do they service their customers? How do they engage in a way that they can survive as a company long term?
That whole kind of conundrum of what's going to happen to people's jobs because of automation, but also automation making jobs and things easier for people. Let's say I'm an entrepreneur and I want to start some kind of business, a startup, knowing where automation is headed. What advice can you give to me?
My advice would be take advantage of it, because technology and automation are democratizers. If you have a good idea and you can tap into those aspects and bring them into your idea, you can level the playing field with huge companies out there that are already doing it. So that is the conundrum, right? It's how do I leverage technology and not use it to sort of replace, but use it to augment what's already out there and bring a new idea to market.
Nicole, this has been an amazing conversation. I feel like we could probably talk for a lot longer just around in these areas, but we're running out of time. So let me ask you, my final question is, what are you most excited about that no one is talking about yet? Because I'm sure you have some insight into what's next, but then also after that, like, how can people get in touch with you online?
Wow, that's a good question. So I think the thing that I'm most excited about right now is the possibility of bringing technology into our homes. I think that that's an area that we haven't explored as much as we could be right now. And it's because of the security aspects that we talked about earlier that, how do I have something in my home that is so smart that it can predict what I'm going to do, or it can predict what my stove is going to do, my refrigerator, or whatever it happens to be, right? And I think that right now, security and all of the things that are surrounding data privacy and the ability to lock down those environments are the things that are going to make it so that in 5 years, if we all talk together, it's going to be a different conversation. You're going to say, wow, I have so much intelligence about what's happening in my home. I think that's the next frontier is the intelligence in the home.
That's cool. And how can people find you on social?
I am on Twitter, Nicole Denil, very easy, just my name. I'm on Facebook, I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on pretty much all of the social media.
Awesome.
Always Nicole Denil. So
perfect.
Well, thank you for chatting with us today, Nicole. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
It's been fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
For more episodes, visit innovationcity.co. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. And if you're in Miami, visit us on Thursday nights. Details are at venturecafemiami.org. And be sure to connect with us on social at We Are Slam and at Venture Cafe MIA. Thanks for listening.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we come to win.